Governor Udom Emmanuel of Akwa Ibom said, addressing the people of the state after the victory he got at the Supreme Court. Well, the crux of the matter of the appeal court rulings had to do with whether or not elections held in some of the states and the role of the card reader became very central in the arguments. We have joining me from our Abuja studio, legal practitioner and electoral and democratic development expert, and also the convener of Situation Room, Clement Nwako, joins us now. Thank you so much, Mr. Nwako, for joining us on the program. Tell me what you think of these judgment for you who have been standing who has been on the sideline. What do you think the rule of law in Nigeria has come out to play out in this case?
Well, I think it's really interesting, the decisions of the court. At this stage, it's difficult to see what the reasoning is. For Rivers, the Supreme Court indicates that it would give its reasoning on February 12th, and for Akwa Ibom and Abia, February 26th. As a lawyer, it's a little bit of a challenge providing any deep analysis or significant analysis of the decisions, given that the Supreme Court has not given rationale for it. But as an observer of the elections, I think what is really important for us as Nigerians is to see more credible election take place, to see us move towards reducing the human element to elections, which is why we were pleased that INEC has taken steps to introduce the permanent voters cards with its features, as well as the card readers as part of the process of accreditation and ultimately voting. It will be interesting to see what the Supreme Court justices decide on the status of these innovations by INEC. But clearly, this has helped to give credibility to the elections, and we hope and expect that in its reasoning and reasons for the decisions that it has taken, that the Supreme Court emphasizes the importance of these innovations in the electoral process, because it really would help to deepen the strength of the electoral process in the country.
Following the cases from the tribunal up to the appeal court and, of course, at the end of the day at the Supreme Court, one will take, the arguments have come towards the issue of the card readers and whether or not elections took place in some of the states. The lawyers have argued, and the political parties, of course, have taken themselves to court asking INEC to prove that elections actually held in some of these states, some of them giving evidence of the fact that elections didn't hold in some place. But at the end of the day, INEC is saying the use of the card readers will validate whether or not elections took place. But at the end of the day, it looks like the Supreme Court judgment has gone in the favor of those whom the card readers didn't really go in their favor.
Well, I didn't get the end part of your comments or questions, but I think that clearly for Nigerians, and speaking as one who did observe the elections and, of course, have followed the process and the cases in the courts, we're all confused right now what the legal position is on the card readers, of course. It's difficult to comment on the specificities of each case, but in the observation reports that we issued and in the report issued by several observers, the challenges with some of the elections was very clearly outlined. And the cases that have been right in focus at this time, Abia, Rivers, Akwa Ibom, including Taraba, have been cases that election observers have followed with interest and have had their observations put out. But of course, the judiciary is a part of the electoral process in this country and has its role to play. And if there are complaints, if there are observations on the elections, it's really going to be the courts that make the final determination. And in concluding our reports, of course, we do make the point that it is important that parties who feel aggrieved use the judiciary, and the judiciary ultimately has a last say on this matter. But for a lot of us, it would be to watch, to read the judgments of the courts. It will be important as well to revert to the legislature where it's to be possible that there are statements or comments made obiter by the justices at the Supreme Court. We do hope that they do make those kinds of comments that would help to feed into the legislative process of further reform of the electoral environment.
Mr. Nwako, tell me, if you look at some of the appeal court judgments, a lot of people have criticized that they have similar arguments or similar prayers from the petitioners when they went to the courts. But at the end of the day, they have very different judgments. But people have said that in the 3 Supreme Court judgments based on the governorship elections, the judgments of the Supreme Court has been even. And so what do you make of those appeal court judgments? Understand that the Supreme Court is making, which has been consistent from the Rivers case up to Abia and Akwa Ibom State.
Well, again, we don't have the decisions in the public domain. The Supreme Court would be given its making public the details of its judgment for Rivers on February 12th, and we are anxiously waiting to read that. For Akwa Ibom and for Abia, February 26th, we're waiting to read that as well. But you're right, it's been very troubling with the Court of Appeal in terms of the different legislative elections. As you know, the legislative elections, the Court of Appeal has the final say, and different panels of the Court of Appeal have been given different decisions on the same issues, and that's why we make the point that it will be useful that the Supreme Court decisions address several of these issues. Clearly, the card reader is not included in the Electoral Act, and we're hoping that the Supreme Court is able to make a decision, even if obiter, that comment or that judgment simply gives the Supreme Court opinion on the importance or not of the card readers. But I think a lot has been achieved with reform of the electoral process in Nigeria, and we would like to see the courts be a part of that process of helping to improve the electoral regime in this country. And certainly where we see the gaps, my hope is that the legislature, as it works to the next phase of constitution amendment and review, and hopefully Electoral Act review, that all of the lessons from these decisions of the courts will feed into settling the legal environment or legal status of several of these innovations that INEC has introduced.
All right. Before I allow you to go, Mr. Nwako, tell me, there are a lot of cases in court based on the electoral process, and of course, not only for the legal minds, but for politicians and our democratic process. We have much more nullifications this time around in the aftermath of the 2015 election. What do you think it portends for our democratic process and our electoral process as well?
Well, INEC has indicated that it has 82 legislative elections to conduct, which is really far highest of any period of elections in the last since the Fourth Republic. My read of it is that it's perhaps really very positive for the country. Previously, we have had situations where politicians go into the field, they abuse the electoral process, and they ask their opponents to go to court. The determination in the past by politicians is really to write up results and leave it to the opponents who have lost to go to court. This of course, means that you are then faced with a legal system that perhaps is skewed against you as the person that lost. Here we have seen an improvement, not even really in terms of the much more effectiveness of INEC in checking fraud and corruption in the electoral process, but the courts themselves also been much more active, and even much more significantly, the courts been able to dispose of cases within record time. As we speak, virtually every post-election petition has been concluded. In fact, all post-election petitions have been concluded. This is record for Nigeria. It didn't happen previously. So I think, yes, technically you would see that there are lots of cancellations, lots of reruns, 82 in the legislative houses, but it just means that in our interpretation, the electoral process is improving.
All right.
And our hope is that the judiciary and the legislature would work to support INEC to further improve the process, help INEC to expand the use of electronic system in the voting process, reduce the influence of the human element in elections.
All right.
And hopefully over time, it would really improve.
All right. We need to leave at that. Thank you so much, Mr. Clement Nwanko, the convener of the election situation room, of course, you know, a legal practitioner and a consultant in electoral and democratic development process. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. We take a break, and when we return, the PDP is saying that they are the true Pan-African or Pan-Nigeria party. How true is this? We take a look at that when we return. Stay with us.